Good evening, and thank you for joining with Mayor Bill Mauro and Mr. Eric Zakrewski, Chief Executive Officer of the Thunder Bay Community Economic Development Commission, for a virtual town hall with a focus on reopening the economy. Residents will have a chance to get answers about economic recovery in Thunder Bay, reopening the economy, and how the city can help businesses in these unprecedented times. You may ask your questions live on the internet by visiting www.thunderbay.ca/coronavirus or by telephone by calling 625-3601 or 625-2224. Please welcome Mayor Mauro and Mr. Zakrewski.
Well, good evening, Thunder Bay. Thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Bill Mauro, Mayor of City of Thunder Bay. We are tonight hosting our second town hall in the last 3 or 4 weeks. The first town hall that we had a few weeks back, I had invited the Medical Officer of Health, Dr. Janet DeMille, to be our guest that evening. I think the town hall went well. The focus obviously that evening was on health-related questions. We think it went very well, and so we're pleased to be with you here again this evening for our second virtual town hall. Joining me this evening as our invited guest tonight is Eric Zakrewski. Eric is the CEO of the Community Economic Development Commission Corporation. We're happy to have Eric with us this evening. He'll give an opening remark here in a minute before we start to take your questions. Again, I want to thank you for joining us. I look forward to having about an hour or so with you this evening. We'll have an opportunity this evening to not only take your questions, but also to talk a little bit at some point, I would expect, about the city's financial position and where COVID-19 has placed us, trying to focus as much we can on business recovery and the situation related to the economy here in Thunder Bay and the district. So once again, thank you for joining us. I look forward to fielding your questions. And now I'm going to ask CEO Eric Zakrewski if he'd make an opening statement. Eric?
Thank you, Mayor Mauro. It's my pleasure to join our audience today. And when the mayor invited me to this session, obviously we talk a lot in our day jobs. And when the opportunity arose, I was quite pleased to take him up on the offer. I think the economy in Thunder Bay has been as hard hit as some other areas in the country. It's on the forefront of a lot of people's minds. So I think an opportunity to get together and discuss what that looks like here in Thunder Bay and what some of our plans are to help business come out of that stronger than ever is an important topic to get together and discuss. So thank you.
Terrific. Okay, I think we're ready for the first question.
Okay, and the first question is to you, Mayor Mauro. As the economy opens back up to normalcy, the threat of coronavirus is still there until a vaccine is introduced. Will wearing face masks while in public places and keeping social distancing be made mandatory?
Well, it's an interesting question. I think that we're all hearing from the province that reopening is occurring in a very phased and staged way, and the anticipation might be for some that we will return to normal as it existed before COVID-19 started to take hold across the planet. I'm not so sure that will be the case. I think part of the concern that many of us have with trying to deal with what the economy will look like is that once it does reopen, will people have the same habits that they had before? When bars and restaurants reopen, will people be comfortable enough and have a comfort enough situation and feeling that they will go in and be in those sorts of areas and those gatherings? I'm not so sure that will be the case. It's why it's important for us to do what we can to support the businesses as they begin to reopen, because that normal may not be what it was. The new normal may not be what existed before we got into this situation. Your question more specifically about masks. We dealt with this issue at council about a week or two ago. The idea to make it mandatory is not within the purview of the municipality. So it's not a decision that we can make. It's not one that we will make. It will be within the authority of the province and potentially the federal government. To this point, they have not made the decision to make masks mandatory. My discussion points when we discussed this at council a couple of weeks ago was to say, though, that I think you're starting to hear the professionals change. The medical professionals will be the one that inform these decisions. Seems to me, though, that you're now starting to hear some of them think that perhaps it will be wiser to do that. Whether or not they will make it mandatory, I don't know. Clearly what we're seeing across this city, and I think across the world, is more people are now voluntarily wearing masks as they go out, as businesses reopen. The grocery stores and pharmacies, as being essential, have always been open, and you're seeing people in those instances wear them currently. But specifically to your question, no, the city can't do that. That will be up to the province and or the federal government to make that decision. We'll have to see what the new normal look like, and that's why the work that Eric's doing at the CEDC and that we're trying to do within the city is important, to try and support businesses as best we're able, because that new normal may not be what the old normal looked like. Thank you. Thanks for the question.
Thank you, Mayor Mauro. Next question is for Eric. I understand that the tourism sector has been particularly hard hit by both travel restrictions and isolation mandates. What will tourism recovery look like in Thunder Bay and Northwestern Ontario going forward?
That's a great question. Obviously, tourism relies on the ability of people to travel, to get out and visit attractions, restaurants, participate in the food and beverage sector, things like that. And obviously that was one of the first things that the provincial government and the federal government cracked down on. So the tourism sector has been particularly hard hit, across the country, across the world. Recovery for Thunder Bay, we believe, is going to take approximately 3 years to recover to pre-pandemic levels. We feel 2019 was a particularly strong year for Thunder Bay. We've got a lot of great things going in terms of attractions, sport tourism events. It's going to take a sort of concentric growth effect before it'll return to those levels. So what we see happening sort of with the first phase of concentric growth is the local people getting out locally. So that's going to be residents of Thunder Bay feeling comfortable and safe and getting out and visiting local attractions, going to their favorite restaurants, going on those hikes as parks reopen. We see that as the first logical step. And then, pending that and the monitoring of health effects, and if that's successful, the next sort of level of concentric growth we see is regional travel. So that's when we would really hope that some of those smaller urban centers around Thunder Bay, we'll choose Thunder Bay to come out and see some of the major attractions that we have, and as things free up, come out and visit those and come and dine in places and restaurants that we have. And then, the third sort of next phase of that is going to be interprovincial travel, probably obviously with Manitoba being one of the locations we're targeting. And from there, ultimately, would be the border, reopening the border, particularly focusing on the border with Minnesota. One of the things we're really concerned about, there's been a lot of publications in the national media about the ability of a lot of tourism attractions to survive. And some of the staggering statistics are, I believe, upwards of 60% of lodges, fishing lodges and tourism-related destinations may not survive past the end of May if things don't relax and people can't keep their bookings and follow through. The good news is our staff are telling us that a lot of people aren't canceling outright. They're simply just pushing back to see when government relaxes the access to those facilities. So that's going to be an important aspect of the back end of the recovery. So that's what we feel it'll look like, and it's going to be a little bit slow, but slow and steady.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question is for Mayor Mauro. Could the city relax some of the zoning restrictions on development in Inova Park now, allowing for more commercial development outside of the current zoning? This could stimulate our economy and invigorate the tax base.
Well, thank you for the question. There's a couple of pieces going on related to that. I'll touch on both of them. The first one I'll ask Eric to focus on a little bit, because the Community Economic Development Corporation is actually the lead on the first piece, and that is on what is a land use planning strategy, where we're conducting a survey. Basically, we're looking very closely through the CEDC at what land we have available, what's the mix of commercial, industrial, and what can we do to try and leverage that and to help the city with its tax base and with some economic growth. So I'm going to ask Eric to chime in on that one when I finish the second half. The second part of the answer that I would give to the question is that we are undertaking currently in the City of Thunder Bay a zoning bylaw review. A short time ago, the City of Thunder Bay landed a new official plan, which will be in effect for approximately the next 10 years. Once the official plan is in place, the zoning bylaw is not always, but often brought into conformity so that the two pieces mesh well. So the City of Thunder Bay is now undertaking that zoning bylaw review. I brought this piece to council a couple of months ago, to make sure council was aware of it. We all then weighed in on the review that city administration was undertaking relative to the zoning bylaw. There's a real feeling, and I think the question speaks to this, about the need for Thunder Bay to perhaps be a little bit more permissive, to have a little bit more flexibility built into our zoning bylaw. And so council had an opportunity to have that discussion with administration. So that review is underway. We would probably be farther advanced with that than we are right now. The COVID-19 has limited the ability for city administration to conduct some of the work related to the zoning bylaw. Part of that work will be a public consultation. So currently that's scheduled for the fall. So unfortunately, it's one example of some of the work that's been pushed off, but that zoning bylaw review is a fundamental piece to the question, and we're all looking for opportunities in administration to build into our new bylaw some more flexibility around what we can allow and what does not get disallowed as we move forward. So, but Eric, perhaps you can offer a little bit more on the land use planning piece.
Sure. Just to complement the second piece you were addressing, though, the mayor actually has created a special task force with the Chamber of Commerce, the CEDC, and various experts out of administration. So we have come together on the zoning bylaw review piece in response to a number of business owners in the business community reaching out to both the CEDC and the mayor's office directly. So that work is going on as that larger group, and will spin into the public consultation engagement work that you mentioned. With respect to the employment land study that you brought up, the first piece, so the CEDC has commissioned an employment land study for the City of Thunder Bay. It's essentially a very in-depth study to look at the availability of commercial and industrial lands within the city limits, owned by the city and other parties that are available, and what status those lands are in terms of their zoning and their condition for redevelopment, what they might best be used for. So really one of the key outcomes is, what parcels of land do we have to market to the world within Thunder Bay for various commercial and industrial uses? Do we need to consider, any fundamental changes in how we do that? And one of the things I can say is Inova Park is a key piece in that study and its results. The consultants in the exercise have identified that some more permissive uses might be very complementary, and some evolving opportunities may be present there. So I can say that our office is absolutely working on that. We're going to be sharing that study publicly. We're going to be bringing it to City Council and to administration to work on together with. And I think some really good suggestions about potential in Inova Park are going to fall out of that.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay, next one.
Next question is for you, Eric. What can we do locally to support the return of tourism to Thunder Bay? And what plans does the CEDC have to help promote recovery of the industry?
I would say that probably the most important thing that we can all do to help tourism recover in Thunder Bay is for, as restrictions are lifted, I think about our vibrant restaurant scene that we had just prior to the pandemic. Probably the hardest sector that got hit the earliest, in terms of staffing reductions and losing their revenue base, their customers due to the restrictions. So, I think as the province lifts those restrictions and we're able and we feel comfortable and those owners know what the new operating parameters are for them to offer those meals that we've all really come to love in Thunder Bay and those dining experiences, for example, it's key that we get out and we make an effort to support them so that they can rehire, your neighbor to work in that facility and serve you that meal. We really don't want to lose the momentum we've got. Quite frankly, at least in the food and beverage scene, Thunder Bay has become the envy of many cities in Canada, with the local scene that entrepreneurs here in Thunder Bay have built. So we really want to see that continue. Another thing the CEDC is going to be promoting heavily through aggressive marketing campaigns into those other markets regionally and then interprovincially and eventually into the northern United States will be special vacation packages. Initially, as I talked about, we're going to focus on staycations or T-vacations, we're calling them, where you may not have done something, in and around Thunder Bay with your family, and maybe that's what you feel comfortable with doing first. So get out, spend some money on that, have spend a day or two at the spa or at one of the hotels that really needs your business, maybe in the waterfront or in the south part of the city. Enjoy that with your family. That has an immediate impact on the economy here. It is going to get people rehired and put them back to work. And our staff will then take that marketing campaign and they will be targeting it farther and wider as restrictions are lifted and we can attract those visitors back to our community.
Maybe I'm just going to add on that one as well. We were talking about the, your comments about the restaurants and the bar scene. And the first question that I had this evening was about as we return to normal, and I mentioned that, well, what will that new normal be? That even when the regulations are relaxed and those bars and restaurants are able to reopen, will people go back? And will we get supported? Eric has very appropriately underscored the vibrancy of our local food and beverage scene. It's just so remarkable what's been accomplished. But will people, when they're allowed to reopen, will they go back in numbers? One of the things that I'm contemplating, and actually have a resolution coming next week to council, thinking about how can we support them if people are still reluctant to go back in large numbers. And I've got a resolution coming for administration to look at how we can perhaps enable more patios. I think just intuitively, people will be more comfortable being outside. The weather's warming. We're getting into that time of year in Thunder Bay with over the next few months. It's going to be easier, and often you will want to be outside. And so what can we do administratively? It doesn't cost us money. This is the good part about it. Can we support the food and beverage scene, small entrepreneurs in Thunder Bay by making it easier for them to have an outside patio where people might be more comfortable and therefore might go down to have a meal and a beverage. So it's an example of what we can try and do that doesn't necessarily cost the corporation money, because obviously people know municipalities do not have a lot of resource. Our revenue streams are very limited. And so it's just one example of what we can try and do to support that sector in terms of coming back. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Next question.
Okay, the next question is for you, Mayor Mauro. What role can sport tourism events like the Special Olympics and Scotties tournament play in rebuilding the local economy?
Well, it's huge. I think that, Eric's touched on this a little bit. He may have a bit more to add. We've seen the huge success that we've had. Of course, Thunder Bay has an amazing reputation as a sport host city. We've got so many great examples in the recent past, World Junior Baseball. The list goes on and on. We are very good. The Special Olympics, of course, just held this past January. So we do incredibly well, and obviously it's a significant contributor to our economy. The most recent example of our success being through the work of the CEDC, as well as the City of Thunder Bay, our bid with a local group to host the Scotties, and we were successful. So that's coming as we sit here next year. Is it January, February, I'm not sure, March of 2021, successful in hosting the Scotties, a national championship. So what's the importance of this? Not only the fact that people will be in the community for 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, however long they will be here, and of course the impact of that on the economy. But an event like that on a national level just represents an opportunity for Thunder Bay from an advertising perspective that we could just not afford to buy. Attached to that particular sport event hosting opportunity for the city is about 70 to 90 hours of national broadcasting time through sport marketing or sport radio and television stations. 70 to 90 hours for Thunder Bay to be front and center on a national basis as that event unfolds or is underway. So it's a massive piece for us, right? We can't afford to buy that kind of advertising. So it contributes not only in terms of the immediate acute piece of people in the community spending money, but the advertising is just fantastic. So as we sit here with the Scotties, we're not certain. We are the winner. We're not certain if we'll be able to host. Currently, of course, we would not be. So we'll see where we lie in the months ahead, but it obviously plays a very important role. Thunder Bay has an amazing reputation and an amazing volunteer base when it comes to these sorts of activities, so hopefully that one comes to fruition and we're able to play host to that as well. Thank you. So next question.
Can I add to that?
Oh, certainly, please do. Yeah.
The Scotties as a sports tourism event in Thunder Bay, it represents a very deep opportunity, particularly given the pandemic we're coming through right now. It's going to put people in our hotels, which desperately need to get those occupancy rates back up. I know it's next winter, but the timing couldn't be better from that perspective. The earned media value you talk about is huge, and we'll actually benefit from that for many years to come. I can tell you that Curling Canada has been phenomenal to work with through the bid process, but upon award, the CEDC will be working, Tourism Thunder Bay will be working very closely with Curling Canada so that we will have time slots to promote attractions and our food and beverage scene, things to come and visit while you come here to go to the Scotties. That'll be playing for months and months in advance of the tournament. And that's what generates that long-lasting earned media value that people will remember for years when they're thinking about their next vacation and they want to hike the Sleeping Giant or do Wilmette Canyon, or come and fly up to a fishing lodge for the day and then come back and go to a brewery for a tour. So we're going to be plugging all those, and as you mentioned, Mayor Mauro, we're actually going to get North American coverage. That's going to be broadcast by ESPN into the New York and Eastern Seaboard. So fantastic event, hits all the marks, helps all our sectors that are really struggling right now and could use a strong shot, and it would really put Thunder Bay back on the map for sports tourism. So
we're going to keep our fingers crossed on that one, and hopefully that comes to pass. Yeah, fantastic. Okay, thank you.
Okay, the next question is for you, Eric, and you've both sort of touched on the vibrant restaurant scene prior to COVID-19. If there's anything you wanted to add, the specific question is, will local restaurants survive, and what can we do to help?
It's a good question, and I think we got so many about this because food's on all of our minds, and we've been making our own meals for a long time. But part of the answer actually is that Thunder Bay's already supporting, I think, our restaurants to some degree. Certainly we know that there's a lot of struggle. The bills keep coming in. There's still rent to pay. There are some federal programs to help with that. We know it's probably not enough in some cases. But one thing we have seen, our office is engaged with almost all the restaurant owners in Thunder Bay. We know that they've been courageous. They've worked extremely hard to innovate. And it's one of the best sectors that I would say has shown how to pivot, change their model for delivering their business so they can continue to earn revenue, cover their core costs, and stay in business for when we come out of this. So things like, they had to close their doors. The province ordered that. They figured out a way to do curbside pickup. They instantly capitalized on takeout and delivery models. So we saw companies that never offered that before turn on the fly and offer that. And we're still seeing them evolve into state-of-the-art businesses and developing online platforms. So they're going digital, and they're allowing you to order in advance. And I'm really proud of that. It's not the best. They do better when the restaurants are packed full of people, but they're absolutely doing the best that they can to get through this. So we think that the majority are going to come out of this. We think they've learned some things, how to get through these tough times. We've lost a few. We've lost some franchises that we're aware of, national or international franchises that, quite frankly, maybe not as well designed to weather something like this as some of our local entrepreneurs. But I've seen mothers and fathers in there supporting young entrepreneurs in their restaurants, helping make meals, helping deliver them to cars. And if that isn't what Thunder Bay is all about, so we think most are going to get through, and they're going to be better businesses when we can get them packed full of people under the new rules.
So yeah, a great news there from Eric on that. These are the people in our community that we all have so much respect for. They're the risk takers, they're small business owners. They're the people that we go to when we need help with a number of things. I said this earlier when we did a taping about trying to support our small businesses in terms of how they're the risk takers, but they're the people that we go to when we need help. They sponsor so many local events, and so we're really hoping now that they're able to weather this storm, and it's why we're casting about looking for good ideas. I mentioned earlier, perhaps something as simple as a patio might help enough small businesses to be able to get enough people to come and support them through this very difficult time. I'm also wondering aloud about whether something about a video promoting the businesses, an interactive map showing who's open, where they're open, when they're open. So we're looking for answers to try and support them as best we're able, because they're great supporters in the community. So good news, Eric, to hear that they're doing as well as they can. Yeah.
Just a follow-up point on that. So obviously people continuing to enjoy and embrace takeout while we can, or delivery. That's hugely important. I like local success stories. I just saw this morning. But good on T-Baytel for creating one of their new campaigns. They're offering $20,000 in gift certificates for local restaurants, 25 local restaurants, for folks to write into T-Baytel and share a good neighbor story. And you can get a $100 gift certificate or whatever it is, but they're going to invest $20,000 into our local restaurants, and that's advanced cash flow. It may not be a lot, but it's a good success story about helping that sector just with one more little thing get through.
Great story.
Yeah,
I'd love to hear that. Yeah. Okay,
thank you. Next question is for you, Mayor Mauro. We have a completed building permit from the city and are wondering when building restrictions will be lifted and when we can start digging.
So Yeah, the question I'm assuming is about a home construction. So currently, this is a question that we get often. It's something that I get emailed a lot about. The restrictions are provincial in nature. So what you are able to do and what you are not able to do when it comes to the construction sector is controlled by the province of Ontario. Very early on, they came out with a list of what was essential and what was non-essential businesses. The construction sector was a little, and has changed a number of times actually since the initial move by the province. For example, if you look at the school in Northwood that's currently being constructed where the old Churchill High School is, that was first allowed to move forward about 3 or 4 weeks ago. It was then said that you couldn't work there anymore. That has now been reopened. So we're seeing the rules around construction change, and I think we're getting to a point now where the rules on construction have been eased considerably and are likely to stay that way. To your question, it sounds like this is perhaps a home construction project. The city is still issuing permits. We will do that. We will still do inspections as they're required. But on the home construction piece, the way it lands right now, it's a bit of an odd one, but you're allowed to dig the hole if you're having a basement for your home, but you're not allowed to construct a home at this point. We're seeing these things change quickly. Stay tuned. I know the Premier's making another announcement on Thursday. I don't know if that will be related to home construction or not. We do know, I should mention, that just today, legislatively in Ontario, they have extended the emergency order to June 2nd. But that doesn't mean that all of the orders move with the emergency order to June 2nd, but it doesn't mean that from now up until June 2nd that they can't make changes to the emergency orders that are in place restricting that construction. So we may see some of them fall off the table as we move closer to June 2nd. We don't know if they'll be extended or not, but for some reason you can excavate. I suppose it has to do with the number of people that would be on the work site and the physical distancing component. That would be my expectation. Maybe they believe it's easier on large construction sites like a school for people to maintain physical distancing. Unfortunately, on the small construction sites like a home, that is the situation that you're facing right now. Even though the city is issuing the permits, we do not control when you can begin that construction. Thanks for the question.
Thank you. Next question is for Eric. Does the CEDC have a plan for economic recovery in Thunder Bay? And if so, what is it?
So let me start answering that by talking a little bit about what's been going on behind the scenes. So, we've been working from home in isolation like a lot of professional teams have. And I'd like to update everybody as to what we've been doing. So we've continued to support all businesses in Thunder Bay, right from Bombardier to the small business that someone has in their garage selling something on the internet. We take an average of about 100 calls a week from various businesses and industries. We work with all the mining companies in the region on a day-to-day basis about what's happening in their sectors. So our staff are engaged. They're monitoring what's going on in those sectors. They're working with the province. They're monitoring the federal government for the changes that are coming in those sectors. And what we try to do behind the scenes is help those businesses prepare in advance so that when they are allowed and restrictions are loosened, they can come out of the gate hard. They have the right protection for their staff, for their customers if they're in retail or food and beverage. And we help them, navigate some of those uncertain waters. A lot of the calls we get, quite frankly, are, I'm in this business, I don't know what to do. Where can I get help? And we're connecting them with people at the province, and we're trying to give them white glove service as a Thunder Bay business to a program that might fulfill some of their needs, whether it's staffing, whether it's rent, whether it's relief, or planning on how to come out of this and deal with the new world order and be successful as a business. So that's what's been going on behind the scenes. As we come out of this and we're more publicly engaged, we will be launching aggressive marketing and advertising campaigns. And we're actually going to kind of work in reverse of the effect of the pandemic, and we're going to target tourism as one of the early hard hit sectors. As I said earlier, that one needs help. We got to get people out and visiting and spending. So we've got campaigns built already. What we need is the same thing everybody's waiting on, is when will the province lift the restriction on this? We've been working with that sector already. We've got ads targeted at certain areas, and as soon as we know we can release those, we're going to keep working and supporting those folks. So we're continuing to deliver our programs. We have some programs to help new businesses start. I had somebody say to me the other day, who would start a new business in this time? You'd be surprised. We have a program called Starter Company, and we've just approved 15 new businesses in Thunder Bay for grants. and as well, we help coach those folks on their new business startups in Thunder Bay. I know Mayor Mauro attended an event in the winter that we put on for the last 15, and you were particularly impressed with how many people that these businesses employed, that they were all still in business. So we've got another 15 in the queue, and we're looking at even more. So we're working on our programs like that. We're keeping the ball rolling, trying to promote existing businesses and help start new ones. So that's really what our plan consists of, along with targeted advertising campaigns to help the businesses out there that really need that traffic.
So some good news out there. I would add as well that it's good to hear what the CEDC is doing and leading on behalf of the city to try and get us in a better position as we come out of this. As well, there's a lot of advocacy that's going on from the city perspective as a member of municipal associations and national associations who are lobbying the senior levels of government, the province and the federal government. We are all looking for assistance and help as we come out of this. As an example, FCM, the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, has had now for some time a very significant ask into the federal government. They've asked for $10 billion nationally to help municipalities with their operating deficits. So Thunder Bay, I'll speak perhaps a bit more of our fiscal position a little later on in our hour, but we have a challenge in front of us, like all municipalities do. Our revenues are down, our expenses are up, so we have some problems. So we're looking for some help there. The reason I mention these asks and that we do believe some support will be coming, whether it's on operating money, whether it's for infrastructure support, is that the business community, and as we're looking and talking about trying to restart an economy, if these deficits are dealt with through taxation and tax increases, obviously this is going to be a very difficult circumstance. We do not want to put our businesses in a more difficult position than they already are, and the ability to deal with this as best we're able and get some assistance from senior levels of government who have the deeper pockets. Obviously, people know municipalities do not have the same revenue tools available to them as the provinces and the federal government does. So the news may not be as stark as it looks. It's a challenge, but I think there may be more good news coming. And I just want people to know we're talking about trying to restart the economy, that we're hopeful as we go into Budget 2021 as a city that we do not need to look at significant tax increases to deal with our operating deficit, because municipalities are not allowed legally under the Municipal Act to run an operating deficit. We have to manage it, and we're trying to do some work on the front end now and looking for assistance to manage that going forward so that the business sector especially, and the residential sector as well, is not faced with a large tax increase in 2021. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question, and you've touched on some of the points, Mayor Mauro, but what are the critical factors for our local economy that the CEDC and Council can work on in order to rejuvenate our economy?
Well, sure, there is a lot, and you're right, we've sort of touched on it, right? So as a municipality, infrastructure is a big component of what we are trying to do on a regular basis within our own fiscal circumstances. But what I can say is we believe there will be help that will come from the senior levels of government on infrastructure. From my previous history as a provincial member, when we went through the recession in 2008, one of the programs that we focused on to try and create jobs, to try and grow an economy through a recession, was massive investment in infrastructure spending right across the province. So as examples that we would have seen here in Thunder Bay was major investments in a Marge plant that led to huge employment levels, four-laning the highway east of Thunder Bay, building the courthouse downtown Thunder Bay, a $250 million project. That's what governments generally do when you find yourself in a recession, or in this circumstance, which some aren't calling a recession, but it really is, although it's different than the 2008 recession. So we're expecting to see some of that assistance. I think we need to continue to do that. We're fortunate here in Thunder Bay in some regard that, we're seeing right now our unemployment number, I think, is a little bit lower than the provincial average. We have a very solid foundation for our economy here in Thunder Bay. Our public sector jobs, our knowledge-based jobs, as I like to describe them, have grown and continue to grow and are taking up a larger percentage of our GDP in Thunder Bay and region and of the jobs that we have in the community. So we're fortunate. We have a college and a university that are foundational here in the city and that are massive employers who are a great foundation. Our resource sector is still doing pretty well. Resolute is still solid. Bombardier has brought some people back. And the mining sector that perhaps Eric could talk a little bit more about is doing well. So we have some foundational pieces that underpin our economy that have been there and will be there on a go-forward basis. We've seen growth with the law school, with the medical school, with things like angioplasty and cardiac surgery to come, all major employers creating new jobs and big paying, good money jobs. So we have some positives that we can continue to build on. And perhaps, Eric, on the mining side, I don't know if you wanted to add a little bit on there to try and show where the growth may come from in the near term.
Sure. Yeah, I could speak to a couple of the points you touched on. Certainly I think our economy is fairly diverse in comparison to a lot of other urban centers our size. A lot of that is the institutional employment we have that offsets the industrial and the commercial employment that we benefit from. Things you mentioned like the new cardiovascular surgery program at the hospital. I think a lot of people in the community are excited about it. They've heard about it. But maybe what isn't understood about that is what the long-lasting permanent financial implications are on the city. We forecast with that new program coming in the next 2 years. It's in development right now. The hospital is proceeding. They're doing fabulous work over there. But the impact on that is $150 to $200 million to the city of Thunder Bay in wages, to 70 direct staff approximately at Thunder Bay Regional, with another 70 to 140 spin-off in the community. Those are great jobs that the government is basically committing, the provincial government, to funding in perpetuity. So that $200 million will roll over and it will appreciate year over year. Those are folks that are buying, those are new doctors that are coming to the community. They're buying new homes in our subdivisions. Those are the important drivers. In terms of getting out of the condition we're in right now and kickstarting the economy, to the question, we're advocating, I know, alongside with City Council, to higher levels of government. We're hoping that, there's been a lot of aid packages designed at employers and employees that have been hard hit on the initial front line of this. What we're really hoping now is the next phase of funding will switch gears into major capital and infrastructure funding. We all know that all cities in Canada face a major infrastructure deficit. We've all got roads and sewer and water and stormwater management plans and changing environmental conditions that cost more and more to meet with. And that's a great example, and where the CEDC, and we know that politicians are advocating for, is if the government, the province can ratchet up spending, for example. We know that the city of Thunder Bay has, X number of projects on tap that they could add this year that'll put hundreds of people back to work and benefit all the citizens of Thunder Bay. So things like that, combined with that existing strong employment base, I think really helps us get through this and out of the hole much better.
I'll just add to it again. I'm going back and forth on this one because this is really a positive piece for Thunder Bay's economy that I'm not sure everybody really focuses on as much and realizes how important it is. The 70 jobs with the cardiac surgery, building on the 40 or 50 with the angioplasty. So building on that program, 120 jobs, permanent. The off-spin that Eric has talked about, the collateral growth that comes from those direct jobs. When I talk about knowledge-based jobs, the really important and good thing about them is that they are recession-proof. So we're in an environment now where unemployment levels are growing right across the country, of course, across the planet, and yet, of course, nobody's being laid off at a hospital. And so those jobs are very important for that reason. When we go through significant recessions like we did in 2008, we saw what happened with forestry, with our primary industries, with a number of other sectors in the private sector. But those jobs don't get affected. They're recession-proof jobs. So those knowledge-based jobs, a law school, a medical school, cardiac surgery, angioplasty, they're all very important for a number of different reasons. And as we grow that sector, Thunder Bay Regional Research Institute, that's been around now for about 8 or 10 years, it's so important. And it's why we are weathering this. There's so much challenge and so many people in difficult circumstances, but it's one of the reasons we're able to weather this relatively well compared to maybe some other centers. So thank you for that question.
Okay, next question is for Eric. Is it still possible to apply for grants to start a business or expand my existing one?
Yep, absolutely. So right now at the CEDC, we just rolled out our starter company program. It's an annual program. I mentioned it earlier in the broadcast. So we have selected 15 applicants that applied. They are all starting new businesses in Thunder Bay. I can tell you there's some really exciting ones in there, similar to the last 15 that graduated through the program and are doing phenomenally well. We've got some new microbreweries that are coming on. We've got some restaurants. We've got some folks doing some manufacturing type activities, producing products and retail. And this is a key part of our economy, is these new startup businesses, the small businesses, because they find ways to really prosper and deal with challenges. They're exceptional at digital platforms and marketing, their products to the world. So we're excited about that, and we're actually looking at now, we're working with our board of directors, and we're going to be putting forth some innovative ideas to expand upon that program. We've got another, I think, 15 or 20 companies that didn't make this cut recently, and we're going to be looking to see if we can't figure out a way to make another 15 happen and get 30 companies starting up right now in Thunder Bay. That certainly is going to help with that. So there's programs right now to help you start a business. We also advise you the whole way through on how to do a business plan. We connect people with banks so that they can go in with a valid business plan and help get additional financing if they need it for capital. And we also have programs and we have development officers that are on standby every day to work with business. If you have an existing business and you're looking to, say, construct a facility or attract investment or foreign direct investment into Thunder Bay, we work with the provincial government and the federal government every day, NOHFC, FedNor. We stay on top of the dollars that those programs will be allocating for Northwestern Ontario and that some of our applicants might be eligible for. We connect our clients with those levels of government, and we help make sure that any dollars that they're eligible for, they can capture, and so they can start those businesses and they can create jobs here. So if you've got an existing business, call us. If you've got a new business, give us a call.
Great news story. A couple of the other things we haven't mentioned in relation to this, the economy generally speaking, is Thunder Bay is one of the, if not the most affordable cities in the country. And it's a part of the things that we have an ability to sell in terms of all of the other natural benefits of living in this city. It's a great place to live and raise a family, but the affordability that's offered by our community is a big selling feature, and it may be potentially a very good attraction tool for us as we continue to market the city. So it's a very good piece. The other thing that we haven't mentioned yet as well is a program being run by Eric's shop, is the Rural Northern Immigration Program. And so we've been in this soup now for a little while. I think it's up and running. It's up and running. It's a very positive opportunity for us to bring new immigrants into the community. It's an employer matching program. Originally 200 a year, I think, but now 100, is that accurate?
100 per year over 3 years.
100 a year per 3 years we're allowed to bring in, but remember those 100 may bring a family of 3 or 4. So a nice opportunity to try and grow the population base as well as match these folks up with employers, and in some cases, many cases, facing a skill shortage. So we're working on that, and CEDC is running that piece as well, so a really nice piece. Yeah. Okay.
Maybe further to that.
Sure.
So with the Rural Northern Immigration Program, I just wanted to mention, so these are jobs that local Thunder Bay businesses and employers have come to us under the program and said, for years, we cannot fill these 5 positions. It's positions that we know are in short supply or they're in over demand, like PSWs. So we're trying to match people up that can, say, come to and work at St. Joe's and fill the numerous PSW vacancies that we have. So these are jobs that there's been openings for a long time. There's going to be lots of job opportunities there, and as you said, the big benefit is these folks that are eligible under the program, they move to Thunder Bay, they've got kids they put in school, they get out and they become part of our economy. The way the program's designed is that they need to stay. That's one of the key factors, is they can't come here, get their permanent residency, and then all of a sudden leave Thunder Bay. They've actually got to stay here and become a part of the community for it to be successful. So we like the program. You're right, it started about 6 months ago. It hasn't really been delayed. It's another thing that has been going on behind the scenes at the CEDC. Our staff are working on it with the federal government. I can tell you we're excited. We can't announce anything today, but we do have at least 25 people sort of matched up with local businesses. I can tell you that a lot of local businesses are now getting involved. They're contacting us. They want to get registered. And the local companies that we're working with are unbelievable. They're really embracing this. They're the ones that are saying, I haven't been able to fill this position for 3 years. And we get them somebody. And they're really embracing it. And it's good for our cultural diversity as a city. So it is a really win-win program. We hope, in the next 3 months or so, we'll be able to bring some news to council about some of the success we know is right around the corner. But it really is a key to growing our city, both population-wise, but in terms of cultural diversity and employment. So
great program. Yeah, we're really excited to be part of this. Yeah, thank you. Okay.
Next question is for Mayor Mauro. What are the things that make you optimistic about our city's economic future?
Well, I think a lot of what we've discussed already tonight, we talk about how vibrant the food and beverage sector is, and Eric just mentioning about how many new businesses are there. But to go back, I think for me, I think it is that we have a strong foundation. I really do believe that. I know I said it in my previous response, but I think we're quite solid. We're relatively solid in terms of our capacity and our ability to weather this storm, and we are much better positioned than we have been 8 or 10 years ago. And a lot of that is because of the growth in the knowledge-based sector. What are the foundational pieces to our economy that keep us strong and healthy? I mentioned the college and the university. There's not a lot of cities in the country that have both a college and a university in them. It's a major employer. As well, back to Eric's point on the cultural diversity and attracting new people back to our community, the college and the university, we're doing great work in terms of attracting international students to both of their institutions. Many of those young men and women that come to Thunder Bay love it here and they want to stay. We have to do the best we can to provide them with job opportunities. And so I think affordability, I mentioned earlier as well, being another key component of this. People, who knows what change this pandemic may bring in terms of the way people perceive where they live and what they can afford to do. I think our affordability is a piece that we need to sell and sell better. So college, university, we are a regional hub. The fact that we are a regional hub is not going to change. That's going to continue to grow. That leads to strength in a variety of different sectors. The airport, up until this pandemic, was a very strong employer in Thunder Bay and was doing great work. That sector was growing significantly. I had a conversation a little while ago with Tim Heaney. I phoned Tim at the Port Authority. The last month for our port was one of the strongest months, paradoxically, and Tim was a bit surprised as well when we discussed it, in terms of the flow through at our ports. So our port's doing well. So we have strength there. We have an airport. We have a public sector that's strong. We're a regional hub. We've got a world-class hospital that is a major employer that is growing in terms of the services that it provides and the employment that it draws to the city and the professionals that are coming to the city. And that primary resource sector in Thunder Bay is still relatively strong. We talked a bit about mining and forestry, Bombardier, the manufacturing sector. So the bones are there. We're doing pretty well. And of course, we're always looking at work that we can do to grow. And Eric, I don't know if you had anything that you wanted to add on that or not, but the optimism is there. I think, as I mentioned, we're in pretty good position to weather this relatively. There's a lot of people suffering. We acknowledge that. But relatively speaking, to compare it to some other cities, I think that hopefully we're going to come out of this better than most and be able to get back to a new normal as quickly as possible.
So just adding to the mining subject, the next question is for you, Eric. And what impact would you say has COVID-19 had on Northwestern Ontario mines?
It's a great question. I think because some of the mines in our region that are closest to Thunder Bay aren't in the city, they go missed by many folks as not being present and accounted for. When the reality is, mining in Thunder Bay and Northwestern Ontario, it's a huge contributor to our GDP, to our employment base. We've got 3 major mines that we're a bedroom community for in terms of skilled labor force. We've got Musselwhite Mine with Newmont, we've got Impala's Lactazile Mine, and then we've got Heart Gold just to the east. And those 3 mines alone do business with over 400 local companies in Thunder Bay, from machine shops to mechanical outfits to general contractors, specialty supply businesses, and different trades. That's a staggering amount of businesses. And I think if I have it right from my mining manager, one mine alone, I think, does over $200 million a year with Thunder Bay businesses. So when you add up the Rolodex of those Thunder Bay companies among all 3 of those mines, huge impact on our economy. Mining, mineral prices are phenomenal right now. Platinum, palladium group metals have been at all-time highs. They're calling for over $2,000 an ounce for gold shortly. So what I can tell you that is happening with the mines, obviously you've got concentrated workforce issues. medical officer of health has been very active in trying to help the mines manage that. They've done the best they can to stay in operation. However, they've obviously had to suspend, and all three are currently suspended right now, so that has an impact on their spending perhaps and some of their labor force. However, there's some really good news stories in there as well. I've confirmed with the president of Newmont, for example, they are keeping all their staff on full payroll, isolated at home until the end of June. They've made that commitment. They obviously have a vision that gold is doing very well right now. They want to go back into production up at Musselwhite and get back to optimal outputs. They don't want to lose their skilled labor force, and I know a lot of those folks personally reside in Thunder Bay. So that's a good news story under a difficult time. Impala has done a lot of great corporate initiatives to retain their staff and be ready to phase back into full operation. So I can't understate how important mining is, and it really is a nice offset to the institutional employers you talked about, the healthcare sector, the education sectors. When you combine all of that, it gives you a fairly robust economy that I think you can weather that storm with that much better. So mining's certainly important and a very bright spot in Thunder Bay for supply chain.
So when you talk about the optimism piece earlier in the question that just came before that, you can see the numbers, the direct and indirect employment numbers associated with the mining sector are massive, and 400 companies dealing with mining sector. And I think, Eric, we perhaps won't discuss tonight, but a number of other mines that are, in the queue, and we're not sure how far out they may be from reopening, but there's more optimism there, I think, in terms of seeing some more mines in the next few years potentially coming online. So lots of good news there in that resource-based sector that we've been talking about.
So we've got time for about 2 more questions. The next one is for you, Mayor Mauro. If stimulus funding is proposed by the higher levels of government, does our city have a shopping list at the ready for implementation? And if so, what projects might be on that list?
Oh boy, yeah, we've got a long shopping list, right? So, one of the things that the city did through our IGA, our Intergovernmental Affairs Committee, and with council as a group, is we set up what would be a priority list for infrastructure spending with our own resource, but obviously in the circumstance now, and as I mentioned in an earlier response, we're expecting that we'll see some infrastructure money flow from senior levels of government. So the list is long. Absolutely. There are a number of projects that are on there. We prioritize them. Actually, I think there were 3 or 4 different categories of infrastructure projects. We categorize them we prioritize them rather, within the category. So there's a number there, but obviously, and Eric mentioned this previously as well, all municipalities across the country, there's an infrastructure deficit, whether it's roads and bridges or buildings. I know one of the things top of mind for people in the city of Thunder Bay is the conservatory. They want to see something good happen there. We've got a lot of roads, bridges, buildings that need upgrade, that need improvement, some new structures that are being contemplated as potentially being a source for some of that. We've already set aside a number of dollars for particular projects that are in reserve right now. We'll see where we end up with those in the near term. But the list is long. To answer the question, just like everybody's list will be long, I can tell you that no matter how much money comes down the pike from senior orders of government, their programs will always be oversubscribed because all municipalities are just like the city of Thunder Bay. They have more need than they have resource to fill. We absolutely need the support from senior orders of government. They are the ones with the deeper pockets. Cities have minimal revenue tools at their disposals, the big one being property tax and a major transfer from the province. And so we're looking forward to that. We expect it's going to come, and it won't be hard to figure out exactly where we want to try and attend. It will be difficult. There's so many projects, but we'll figure out a way to spend it and apply for it for sure. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, and our last question, I think, applies to both. What outreach is the city and CEDC doing to learn what impact this pandemic is having on small businesses in Thunder Bay? Eric, did you want to take that?
Sure, I'll go first. So my staff regularly, as in every day, conduct outreach with all the different sectors in Thunder Bay. As I said, from giant mining companies down to the individual working out of their basement selling something on the internet. We engage the hotel sector, the food and beverage sector, retail, on a daily basis to monitor what's going on, what challenges those folks are running into relative to the pandemic and the restrictions, help guide them towards solutions that are coming out of higher levels of government in terms of funding and relief. We're also doing some online outreach. I know we host regularly via Skype, or Zoom or whatever it is today that we're all using. Our staff are conducting sessions online that a lot of businesses in Thunder Bay are actually signing up for. We're having guest speakers from the business community all the time. Every Friday we host a session online that 20 or 30 businesses will attend. And they just get to ask somebody that's built a really successful restaurant in Thunder Bay, or built that hotel that is really well known, or a retail store, and dealt with those challenges before. And you'd be surprised at the number of business owners that connect through that platform and ask questions about what to do next. And to me, that's some of the best outreach. We're also working in partnership with the Chamber of Commerce. We're in the same building. We work together. They've got their membership, but certainly we're trying to make sure that we reach everybody as much as we can. We're helping to support their delivery of some online workshops and programming that they're really good at, just to help continue with the education piece. So there is a lot of outreach there. It can be a phone call to our office, and we can expand upon it from there. And then it can go into any number of one of those platforms. So,
right. Well, I think we've reached the end of the hour. So, first of all, let me thank all of you who have tuned in this evening, who have stayed with us for the entire hour or part of the hour. We really appreciate your attention. I do believe that much of this will be posted online. I think all the questions and answers are going to be posted online, and we will answer even questions that came in that we did not get to in the hour. You'll see answers to those in the days ahead. So again, thank you very much. Let me offer my thanks and appreciation to Eric Zakrewski, the CEO of our Community Economic Development Commission. I hope that you found the hour useful. If there are questions that you don't think we've answered well enough, or that you have other questions that you'd like to ask, please find a way to reach out to us. We're easy to find. And finally, I'd like to close by just on the theme of the evening is business. Please remember, as we've been talking about this evening, do whatever you can to support your local businesses. They're the risk takers. They're the entrepreneurs in our community. They're the ones investing their own money. We look to them on so many occasions to support local events over the years, and so we really need to do everything that we can to help bridge them through this pandemic. We're going to get on the other side of this. It's going to take a little bit of time, but there's been some good news that you've heard as well this evening. So again, to everybody, I really appreciate your attendance. Thank you very much, and we'll look forward to perhaps doing another one of these virtual town halls in the weeks ahead. Thank you very much, everybody. Please stay well, respect physical distancing, and we'll see you on the other side. Thank you all very much. Good night.